Let's take a look at the JSA. It will be the most used document of the 5.
In the upper right-hand corner, there's a place for the date when the job actually takes place. If you're doing any type of permitted work, the permit tracking number will go under the date. Notice the words in red, JSA must be kept at worksite. Since the reason for the JSA is to keep everyone at the job site safe, everyone there must have access to the JSA, so they'll be aware of any hazards, as well as the steps in place to lessen those hazards. Note the section explaining what a JSA is used for, specifically to identify hazards and foster communication about the safety aspect of the work being performed. We want to eliminate all employee and contractor injuries and accidents, and we believe the JSA is the right tool to help us reach that goal.
A very important change from the way we've done things in the past. The JSA is good only for the shift issued and only if conditions do not vary during that shift. Any change in the job necessitates a need to redo the JSA to capture the changes, for example, scope of work, hazards, weather conditions, or others.
If a job continues through multiple shifts, another JSA must be written to identify nighttime versus daytime conditions. There are certainly different hazards that must be taken into account when working at night, long hours, or many days in a row.
As has been the custom, any JSA or permit must be retained for 1 year from the date of issue, and anyone who may be affected by the work going on should be notified and provided a copy of the JSA. The job location section should be completed as accurately as possible, and a brief description of the task shown in the job description. Both the Plains representative and any contractor representative's names and contact information should be recorded. Before moving down to the next section, we'll move up to page 3 and complete the Emergency Contingency Plan and the Safe Work Plan. The Safe Work Plan is not a summary of the work, but an actual step-by-step accounting of how you expect the job to progress from start to finish. When you've completed the Safe Work Plan, go to the top of page 2, review the list of possible hazards that may be encountered, and place a check mark in those boxes. These include pace. We know from experience that this has been the #1 issue which has resulted in employee and contractor injuries and accidents. Eyes on path. The second reason people get hurt, not watching where they're walking or driving. Line of fire. Can anyone get hurt by being in the way of the work going on? Pinch points. Stored energy. Carefully consider, are there any electrical, mechanical, chemical, thermal, hydraulic, or pneumatic hazards? If so, a lockout-tagout permit is required. Moving or rotating equipment? Dust from flying debris? Is this hot work? If so, the hot work permit must be completed. Will the work involve a confined space where a permit is required? Will the task include excavating? If so, an excavation permit is necessary. Might fatigue be a factor? Lifting, bending, carrying? Any hazards due to climbing stairs or ladders? Possible exposure to chemicals? Is the work occurring in a confined space? If so, determine if the confined space requires a permit or not. Are there overhead power lines? Any overhead work occurring? Will anyone be working at heights? Is the workspace limited? What about the environmental conditions? Is there a chance that vapors, fumes, or gases might be encountered? What about vibration? Any other hazards? Note that any box checked on a line that reads Permit Required in red requires a permit be completed in addition to the JSA. Next, review the pre-work checklist, checking off the Yes column for any items that will be required, and No for any not required. In the middle of page 2 is where you will list the steps of the task that you will be doing from beginning to end. Generally, you should list no more than 10 steps here. If you have much more than that, then you need to decide if your job scope is too broad and you should be completing multiple JSAs. The steps here are fairly self-explanatory, but we will cover them to ensure continuity across all facets of the business. List the job steps in numerical order, briefly describing 1. The activity undertaken. What will I be doing? 2. Any recognized hazards. 3. Consequences of those hazards. What can go wrong? 4. Any safeguards currently in place to prevent anyone from getting hurt? And 5. Any additional controls planned to ensure everyone's safety? What am I going to do to eliminate hazards? Now that the Safe Work Plan and hazard identification mitigation has been completed, we'll return to the bottom of page 1, determining what safety equipment is required. These include hard hats, eye and face protection, steel-toed safety shoes or boots, flame-resistant clothing, hearing protection, respiratory equipment, lockout-tagout devices, locks or blinds, any monitors for LELs, oxygen content, H2S or benzene, first aid kit, fire extinguisher, fall protection, confined space tripod, hoist or harness, necessary communication devices, GFCI protected electrical sources, fresh air breather box, bonding clamps or ground rods, warning signs or barricades, shoring or shoring boxes, portable lighting, welding blankets, curtains or protective barriers. Anything else? Each line needs to be checked either yes or no, with any additional equipment required, but not listed shown at the end. Any line with a box checked yes requires on-site verification that this safety equipment is in fact in place. There are only 2 steps left to complete the JSA. The first is to review the JSA with all personnel on site, answering any questions or concerns, and then have them sign the bottom of page 3. Last, but certainly not least, is to return to the pre-work checklist on page 2, ensuring that any items checked yes are completed. If so, check the box in the completed column. If no, do not proceed until completed. You have successfully completed the JSA. Congratulations!